can
All
record
right.
it over
Wow.
here.
We're live. We're live with it's totally unacceptable. Apparently, everybody.
Right.
Stream is totally unacceptable. No, I'm just being sort of slightly facetious because the latest news in the past half an hour. Some of you watched my interview with David Gibbs, but since the Trump administration or Trump has come out and rejected, unsurprisingly, Iran's counter proposals. Although, to be honest, we don't really know what they have been because neither side have really published them. But I'm back with a new guest, someone who we've been trying to do this for a while, haven't we, Matt?
Yeah, that we have.
But yeah, Matt, how do I actually say your surname? It's Matt Tardio.
Tardio.
Okay, excuse me. Well, my name, people screw up my name, so I get it. But yeah, it's a long time coming. What's your take on the total unacceptability of Trump's comments?
You know, right before this, I just put out a post, literally as I was waiting for the sucker to go live, and I said, you know, Trump's caught between a rock and a hard place now. If he starts bombing Iran again, then he's going to get accused by the politicians of basically restarting Operation Epic Fury, which he already said was over and done with. If he goes and, institutes the blockade again, which is the most likely course of action, he's going to get accused of putting U.S. troops at unnecessary risk. If U.S. troops end up getting hurt, harmed, etc., then the U.S. is going to retaliate, and it's going to basically be made to look, as if Trump was turning them into be sitting ducks, for an excuse to go back into Iran. If we wait for Israel to get attacked, or if Israel launches a preemptive attack, we're going to get accused of being drugged back into another war in the Middle East by Israel. And so I think he's kind of in a lose-lose situation, personally, politically speaking. I think either way, bombs are going to start falling again sometime in the near future, or we're going to end up seeing the insurgency get launched over inside of Iran by the Kurds. Possibly.
Yeah, it's. I'm just trying to get a better sense of what was actually in the Iranians' proposal. But from what I understand, I think it's largely they were willing to look at their enrichment, hand it off to a third party, probably Russia, but over a shorter time span, which the Americans had suggested 20 years or something. They're not allowed.
Allegedly, we don't have that confirmed. Allegedly, 20 years. Allegedly.
But I don't know. So what? Are we just back to square one in your opinion then? With the talk?
I think we're back to well, I don't think we've ever left square one, right? When we look at the media reports on everything that's came out so far, they have said that the 20-year proposal, I've seen 15, 16 things like that have been out there in the papers for how long they have to hold off from enriching their uranium. But the last time that actually came out about that, Trump apparently shot that down. He's been very adamant this entire time about Iran's never going to be allowed to enrich uranium. And that was his whole purpose from withdrawing from the JCPOA back during his first presidency. He wasn't happy that they were allowed to enrich any uranium. He said numerous times that if they want to enrich, or if they need uranium for a peaceful nuclear energy program, that they can, buy it just like every other nation does. I don't get it. I don't get where that 20-year time span came from or who's putting that information out there. I didn't see an actual official statement on that. But I do know that he has constantly said that they're not going to be allowed to enrich. And that's something that has remained pretty steady, other than, according to an anonymous official familiar with the matter, which every time I read that, I just ignore it because there's no, most of the time, 95% of the time, it seems like over the last 2 years, that information is not accurate.
The thing I'm interested for your take here on, because like Mario, I interview a lot of different people from different perspectives. And one of the things that has been an underlying theme of everybody, and this is what I'm interested to hear from you, is Trump seems to have been able to single-handedly, let alone his administration, bring together people from all walks of life, be them left-leaning, right-leaning, centrist, anti-war, whatever, and generally understand that this was a terrible idea. Or maybe it hasn't gone as according to plan as it should have done. So do you think that Trump has any sense of what he actually wants from this, or he just keeps reacting and changing his mind because the Iranians keep, taking action over the Hormuz Strait or whatever?
Well, let's clarify. When you say that you think that everybody thinks that it's a terrible idea, which part are you referring to? Are you referring to Epic Fury? Are you
watching Operation Epic Fury in the first
literal
place?
Mic drop? The whole thing in the first place, going after. I don't believe that. I believe that most Americans actually do think that that it was a good idea to actually go and bomb Iran. I think what we're seeing on social media isn't a direct reflection of the American public. There's a lot of people here that absolutely understand Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. They understand Iran verifiably enriched uranium to 60%. No other country has obtained that level of enrichment without obtaining a nuclear weapon. We now know that Iran has ballistic missiles, intermediate range ones that are capable of, reaching 4,000 kilometers across Europe, and that they were moving weapons down into Venezuela, had an actual arms agreement. And if they were moving those ballistic missiles into Venezuela, which I think is the reason we went there first, on top of, the cheap oil and whatnot that's going to China, money laundering for Russia, et cetera. If one of those ballistic missiles was placed into Venezuela, it would have reached the entire eastern seaboard of the United States of America and, pretty much half the United States in general. It would have gone, drawn an arc from Maine all the way down to about 3/4 of Texas. And that'll give you an idea for what it could have actually covered. So, I think it was, a threat. I think most, especially U.S. service members, understand the sentiment of what the IRGC had done to us while we were overseas, the role that they played during the global war on terror, and the evil that they project via their foreign terror organizations like, Ansarullah down in Yemen or Hezbollah over inside of Lebanon. So I think that most Americans understand and still have that belief that, radical Islam terrorism, bad, and Iran is functioning it. Not to mention, they had a terror plot to kill the president of the United States of America, IRGC agent over here, just got convicted of it a couple months ago. So it's not like it's a secret that Iran is trying to assassinate a foreign leader. Now, if the United States had done so to, say, Russia, let's say Russia came out and, arrested an American spy on Russian territory that was doing murder for hire plots against Putin, I feel like we would be at war with Russia, would we not? And that happened here in the United States of America, and we're pretending like it didn't. And it absolutely did. So I think all of these things combined, when we look at it, we got to start asking, why are these things taking place? Why is it so heavy? And I think most Americans, most of them anyways, can look at that and understand what it is. I know Joe Kent's posts have gotten a lot of attention recently. Have you looked at the comments of those?
No, I
should read through the comments. You should read through the comments because they're not positive. They're negative when he puts out like the different stuff he does. They're all negative comments. The vast majority anyways. Obviously he's going to have supporters, but the vast majority are negative. And I'm seeing that trend, and I'm seeing the same trend go towards Tucker Carlson, for example. Like Tucker Carlson had a very good conservative base and he was doing very good for a while. And it seems like he's getting cramped on really hard. When you look at Sean Ryan's episode where, he put one of my posts up along with one from GBNT. The guy's name's Chase, he got some pretty damn negative comments on that as well. When he dropped the trailer for that over on his X account, like all the comments, just negative as hell, for trying to make us look like we're some sort of a psyop or something, for saying these things. It was so negative that in my opinion, for the first time, we actually saw him try to flip in reverse and bring somebody back on a show the following week that was positive speaking for him, positive speaking for the United States, speaking to the same talking points that I'm talking about now. So I think that people are starting to see through some of that crap. A lot of the posts over on X, like we know we've got a lot of foreign bots, foreign accounts, et cetera. When Elon went and he flipped the switch on the different X accounts, we saw, countries of origin pop up. We had major MAGA accounts that allegedly were based here in the United States of America that were, and then all of a sudden we see them from Turkey, we see them from Syria, we see them, like all of that stuff was happening. Well, when Elon took and they started switching, you got to be tracking the algorithm problems that they have over on X right now that a lot of people are complaining about, and taking away, the monetization from reposts and from, foreign accounts, bot accounts, things like that. And you saw a lot of accounts that used to have a reach all of a sudden drop, tank hard, and complaining about it publicly for where it's at. To me, that's a sign of like foreign engagement, foreign bots. And there's different types of bots that actually exist. You've got good bots and you've got bad bots. And when we say bots, we're talking like bot farms or server farms and things of that nature that exist out in this world. There are some of them that are controlled by, studios and desktops and things like that, where you just have cell phones lined up, just across like the board, just thousands of these things that are actively engaging and working, and putting this out. So it's hard for the system to detect it. And then you have bad ones. Pick a single social media company that says that they're going to boost your brand, right? Any creator knows that if you go out and you hire one of these things, it's actually going to kill your reach and kill your engagement because it's fake, it's it's cheap bots, right? They're just codes written into a computer that are doing this engagement. And so I think what we're seeing is actually targeted engagement of those shutting off the two different types of bots, and making sure that goes away. And when we're saying that, we're starting to see a change in the narrative that's actually coming out now. And I'd cite Tucker and his fans that have slowly gone away. I mean, even he came out and admitted that he had, mostly, it had grown a massive engagement from overseas. His engagement went from, being based mostly in the United States to having a massive engagement coming from overseas. And I think when we look at this and we say, where's the money at? Let's follow the money and let's see like what's actually coming out of it. Particularly when you see like the narrative that goes against Israel and the Jews and all this other crap. I cite the statistic all the time. You got 17, maybe 18 million Jews worldwide. And you've got over I think it's like 2.9 or 3 billion Muslims across the world, on any given day. So who's going to have the bigger pool to recruit from when it goes to getting views, clicks, and monetization on things, right? Like there's a very clear benefit for choosing one side over the other. Tucker openly came out with that just like, what was it, last week? Talking about the numbers that he had, which is insane. And I think people are misconstruing that. You see X amount of views on Tucker Carlson's channel and you just assume it's going to be all American people that are watching it. Turns out it's not. Turns out it's people from, over in the Arab population. So that's my take on it.
It's either Arabs or it's a lot of Southern Asian communities.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about the imposition of missiles into Venezuela, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this and their capacity to strike Eastern Seaboard, because that's makes me think of the Cuban Missile Crisis, makes me think of Soviet missiles in Cuba and American missiles in Turkey. So, the Iranian argument would be that, well, we're surrounded by American bases and therefore we have a right to put them in Venezuela. Personally, I don't know how much that is the same reasonable argument. I think anyone of a reasonable mind wants a different government in Iran. It doesn't have to be 100% Western, but much like Putin, I think we all want someone who's more reasonable in charge of Russia, right? I'm not expecting a liberal democracy in Russia. It's not. The Russians are not for personal experience. They're not mindset for a sort of, they prefer a more centralized form of governance. Anyway, so, but my point being with all of this is like with Iran, do you not understand how their perspective, which is like, well, we're surrounded by American bases, therefore we should put missiles in Venezuela.
That's a very skewed perspective, right? Because context matters. And I think that that's one thing that framing matters. And that's the, regime's frame, to throw it out there. We're surrounded by American bases. It's the same, talking point that Putin likes to throw. We're surrounded. NATO's advanced all the way up to our borders, right? And the truth is NATO hasn't invaded a single country. Countries have decided to join NATO. And it's the same thing when we start talking, minus Iraq, right? When we look at Iraq, we can say, okay, well, minus Iraq. We invaded Iraq. We instilled a puppet government, whether we like to admit it or not. That's what ended up happening. At the same time, though, the United States was not threatening to blow Iran off the map until Trump got in office. It just didn't happen. And we've had decades. So the proper framing, in my opinion, of Iran's narrative or the regime's narrative, where it says we're surrounded by American bases. Well, the American bases aren't threatening to kill the leadership of Iran until just recently. But for decades, we've heard the exact opposite come out of them, where they are threatening to kill the United States leadership. And they have taken active steps, as I just threw it out there, to take out the U.S. leadership. And they have framed death to America as one of their chants and slogans. So when they talk about obtaining nuclear weapons and enriching uranium beyond 60%, they brought it upon themselves. There's no other way to look at that. If someone's threatened to kill your family numerous times and then send somebody into your house to assassinate your wife or your kids, goes out and starts buying bigger guns because it failed, what are you going to do? You're going to allow them to just continue to do that, or are you going to take care of the problem before they get into your house? I think you're going to take care of that problem. And I think that's the perspective of the United States.
Yeah, I get that. I think, where I do disagree with people who try to claim about NATO and the expansion, I had Wesley Clark on, former NATO commander, a few days ago, and he was in charge of the alliance during the Kosovo War. And there's a lot of debate around how NATO conducted itself in the aerial campaigns. But I still maintain the belief that NATO is expansionist, but it's expansionist because countries wanted to join it. It wasn't because they were forcibly imposed to do so. They wanted security from, a renewed Soviet Union. And when Putin acted as he did in the Chechen wars, and then over Georgia, I mean, it was pretty clear that a lot of them were worried about his ambitions. So
and let's say NATO did expand. Let's take that narrative and say NATO did expand. Gorbachev already came out in 2014 and stated that only pertained to that particular time back in the 80s, not into present day, that they would never expand again or anything. He actually said that the United States and our allies met every single every single like letter that was there, and that is a false narrative. It's fact.
Yeah, well, Secretary James Baker agreed at the time that it was a voluntary sort of MOU, right? Memorandum of Understanding, but it wasn't an official agreement on US policy. Also, the Soviets actually wanted to try and join NATO as early as 1954. So it's there's a lot of history that people don't know or deliberately obscure. But bringing
I liken it to the Budapest Memorandum, right? Like while we're on it, like I don't want to skip over this one because I hate every time people are like, United States promised security guarantees under the Budapest Memorandum. Like, have you read it? It's 6 short paragraphs, and nowhere does it say that we will defend Ukraine, not even remotely close. It says we're going to confer in the event that one of the nations doesn't agree to all of that, right? That's what it says. We're going to confer. We're going to talk about it. We're going to figure something out. It never says that we're going to protect them or anything like that, which is why Zelensky is so hard up about wanting security guarantees. But I just wanted to get that out there while we're talking about it, because it's very similar, in narrative to where people hear one thing and they echo it. But it's these things that are taken out of context that people really don't understand and look at to understand why things are the way they are.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a good historical parallel, isn't it? The situation between NATO and Russia and obviously Iran and the US, but also because they are very intertwined now, these two conflicts. But
very much so.
Before going down that pathway, I'm kind of curious what you think about what happens now since Trump has rejected the situation. Are we going to see a renewed set of tensions over the Strait of Hormuz again? Because I think what we saw the past week was a sort of an attempt by the US to pressure the Iranians to accept more of the terms. This is something Trump seems to do, which he branches the stick and the carrot, right? They're trying to talk, but he's also using military means, coercive diplomacy, right?
I mean, I don't mean to laugh at like, are we going to see more hostile actions in the Strait of Hormuz? Like, can you tell me, 48 hours in a row that have gone by where there hasn't been a hostile act?
Past 2.
Can you give me
Past 2? There wasn't
much. The last 2 days?
Yeah.
When we exchanged fire, didn't we exchange fire on Friday? Didn't we go over and bomb, or was that Thursday? Was that Thursday evening that we ended up bombing Bandar Abbas?
I think that was Thursday.
Oh, Thursday evening. So we managed to make it a little short time ago. No, that's actually not true because a ballistic missile was fired today over at the UAE that ended up getting shot out of the sky. Fact. So we can't even say.
No, that's not Hormuz though. The UAE is different.
No, it's not. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. No, because the reason Iran attacked the UAE is because they're housing U.S. forces that are enforcing the blockade. That's why. It's the same thing.
What do you think about the UAE's methods?
They're getting fed up.
Very good, actually, haven't they? They've had some.
They're getting fed up. They're getting fed up. I think all the Gulf nations are getting fed up at Iran. And I think the reason, everybody got in this mess in the first place was because of the ballistic missile, basically because of what we're seeing today. The Gulf nations were kind of being held hostage by this ever-knowing threat that Iran would try to shut down the strait. And so they didn't want to stir the pot. They didn't want to get into it. They didn't want to start these problems. Well, now that Band-Aid's been ripped off. And so now we're seeing and we're listening to the Gulf nations. I think the actual way forward, aside from the hostilities, that are about to take place, actual way forward is going to be the different Gulf nations coming together to guarantee the Strait of Hormuz will remain international waters and freedom of passage through there. And I think it's going to take an alliance over there to keep Iran in check. And it can't be from the United States of America. People in the Middle East are tired of seeing American flags on their soil. They're tired of seeing American munitions fly. It's totally different if the UAE is doing it. It's totally different if Qatar actually, which is a huge step, starts to take place in condemning Iran. Normally they try to be like the mediator in a lot of these things, even with like Hamas. But now we're seeing this huge different step. So I think that's going to be the way forward personally. Saudi Arabia, the UAE kind of leading the charge and getting all the Gulf nations together to be like, Iran, we're tired of your crap.
I would love to agree with you, Matt, but the Emiratis have left OPEC. They have a significant, increasingly structural rift with the Saudis. So how are we going to see that work if these two aren't willing to patch it up? If anything, UAE is getting much closer with Israel and America, and therefore that's going to be a bit of a problem if you think that the Gulf states, a multinational force, is going to manage the strait. I mean, I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see some kind of constructive pathway forward, but there seems to be a bilateral rift between these two, the two key actors in this area.
I agree. And Saudi's got the ability to go over and use the Red Sea and send things out that way. But here's the thing is that goes down to diplomacy. Things like that, I think, when we're talking about rifts between two nations because of economical differences and OPEC, whatever, When we start talking about all of that stuff, that's where diplomacy really needs to come in. When it goes down to Iran and radical Islam, I don't really think there's a way to deal with that diplomatically, right? Like one is based off of a radical religious ideology, and the other one is based off of economical issues in fighting for power and power struggled, type things. So I think there's a big difference between those two things. And I think diplomatically speaking, that there's ways to grease the wheels on both sides to make that work. Different monetary incentives, whatever. But when it goes down to the Strait, all of those nations over there do in fact benefit from that. And I think that's totally different. And there's incentives, but to stand up against Iran, keep the Strait open, completely different. We're not talking about having them go over and them try to cause a regime change, them try to invade the country, none of that stuff. Just simply, the Arab nations taking on and saying, we're not dealing with this crap anymore. Like we're going to take responsibility for our own area of the earth. Totally different.
Yeah, I think that's a fair distinction. But then, you talk quite decisively about how we should do something with the Strait of Hormuz. But how's that going to work? The British are sending HMS Dragon. Should the Turks get involved? The Egyptians? How does a multinational force administer the Strait, in your opinion?
Do you think the Turks? Well, you mentioned the Turks, so let's knock that one out first. Turks have been attacked 3 times now. Haven't done anything about it. Like refused, absolutely. Like they had ballistic missiles launched at them, and they're like, "Oh, that must have been a windage miscalculation, right?" They just pretend like it never happened. Turks aren't going to get involved. They're staying the hell out of it. I don't even like Turkey being involved in NATO like right now in the first place. And I think Iran and the Turkish issue might be slightly aligned a little bit behind the scenes, but when it goes down to the Strait and how that's going to get taken care of, I think really, like the Brits and the French, moving down in order to take part, that's more or less a statement. That's a political statement, in my opinion. Is it going to help swing the battlefield a little bit? Not really. I mean, if the U.S. really wanted, we could project a hell of a lot more firepower over there if we needed it. I think it's a political statement. 2 aircraft carriers carry a hell of a lot of damage, along with all the other stuff we have in the region. There's only so many things that you can bomb. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, to me, it's more of a political statement. Having somebody else, it's like the guys that are about to square off in a bar fight, and all their friends go and stand up behind them. Like China sending, anti-ship cruise missiles over there. It's rumored that they also sent some surface-to-air missiles. It's rumored that Russia has now started to smuggle stuff in via the Caspian Sea. So, I mean, all of these things are kind of an issue. And I think what you're seeing is like these different alliances starting to form. And we've had this proxy war taking place in the Middle East for some time between the U.S. and Russia over inside of Syria. Russia ended up losing out on that one. And then we had the deal with Venezuela. Now that Venezuela is kind of chopped out of the mix, now we're looking at Iran being the next big proxy war, right? Only now, I mean, eventually you're going to run out of proxies. And I think that's what we're really looking at here, to where now it's a direct head-on-head engagement. China's suffering, like whether they like to admit it or not, China's suffering. They got 40% of their oil from the Strait. They've had to acquire it now abroad. I think the 2 countries, if I remember correct, are Brazil and India, where they're getting it from, and they're paying increased prices because of that. They were buying 90% of Iranians' oil at the time we ended up shutting everything down and kicking this off on February 28th. 90% of Iran's oil was being bought up by China. That's a lot of really cheap oil from sanctioned countries. 70% of China's teapot refineries are shut down. I think all of this really does play back to Russia-Ukraine conflict. And again, now we're seeing a ceasefire take place, right, over this weekend. So, which I haven't checked up on. I don't know. It could have already broken and fallen through.
As well. So,
did it fall through?
No, it didn't fall through. There were some skirmishes, or exchanges. But what was interesting actually was Putin said the war is coming to a close, which was quite a surprising statement to hear from him. But I think that's that would be how scale back the parade was and the fear of Ukraine attacking, which is not even something I would have thought before.
No, come on now. This is why I bring this up. Russia. The sanctions, I don't like Joe Biden. That's not a secret, right? But I'll give credit where credit's due. Like the sanctions that Joe Biden placed on Russia had a very significant impact. But they started to do their workarounds. They started to do their workarounds with China. They started to do their workarounds with Venezuela and Iran. That pipeline for Russia is getting cut off now. It's getting cut off. You cut off the oil to China, and you start shutting down those teapot refineries and everything over there. Economically speaking, you're slowing down production and you're increasing export costs, to anybody that's going to end up buying that stuff. Russia, because they were so heavily sanctioned, they were getting a lot of their how do you want to say, like, logistical support from China. All of their metals manufacturing, all of that crap was coming out of China, and they didn't really care if it was cheaper, crappier Chinese products because it's going to the front line and it had a very good chance of getting blown up and destroyed. So they don't care. They just need to have tanks rolling. They need armor rolling. They need vehicles. They need all of that stuff coming out of there. Well, now their costs are increasing, and that's a pretty big problem. That is a very, very big problem, that their costs are increasing and it's hurting the Chinese economy. And I got a feeling behind, we were looking at some diplomatic discussions between the United States and Russia, because Russia is now getting squeezed economically as well. They can only afford to do so much.
About the Chinese-Russian relationship, I'm not sure I understand.
So Russia, with all the, I'll string it down pretty simple. Russia, with all of the sanctions that have been placed on it underneath Biden, right, had a significant impact. But they found their workarounds with Iran, and they found their workarounds with China, and they were able to get cheap product because of that. The cheap product was only cheap because you start looking at manufacturing costs, and you start looking at transportation and all of that stuff, and you start talking about energy. And that energy for China was able to stay so cheap because of two countries, Venezuela and Iran. They were getting cheap Venezuelan oil as well. The amount of yen that ended up getting loaned to Maduro was getting paid back in cheap Venezuelan oil. Do you remember the first things that we went after before we actually ripped Maduro out? We were going after sanctioned oil ships. And nobody questioned why. Nobody looked at it and went, weird. I wonder why Trump would take some 50-year-old gripe and say, we're now going to go after this oil and that it belongs to the United States because, some deal fell through back in the 60s. That's exactly what we did. And those first 3 ships we went after, they were all operated by the IRGC. So the IRGC was actually taking that oil and moving it up to China, selling it to the Chinese, or moving it, facilitating that movement to the Chinese and getting payback. And that payback was going into funding their ballistic missile and their nuclear program. So when we ripped out the Venezuela aspect of China getting cheap oil from them, and then we shut off Iran, we ended up cutting off 2 key lines of funding to keep the cost of production down, which in turn affects the Russian battlefield. Does that make more sense now?
You're saying that the war in Iran was about China?
In my opinion, yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest here. I've been saying this for I said this back in December. I can show you that. You go to my profile and go to January 2nd. I dare you. Go to my profile and go to January 2nd, and you'll see a graph that I put together, and it shows Russia and China up at the top with Iran down below it. Then you see Venezuela, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. And all of those are an important, step in the wheel of cutting these people out, because Trump is not going to go to war with Russia. It's not going to happen. We're not going to go to war with Russia. We're not going to put American boots on the ground over in Ukraine. That's lunacy, right? That's stupid. We're not going to do that. But what we'll do is we'll go after them economically. We'll go after them in that way, and we'll put that strain on them. Those sanctions worked for a certain period of time. What we have, in my opinion, is a convenient excuse over inside of Iran, which is their enrichment program. Additionally, on top of that, they're also a foreign terror organization. Right? The IRGC is a designated foreign terror organization in the United States of America. That gives us the ability to target them. When we went after Maduro, we went after him with a federal indictment. Yeah, everybody looked at that as a everybody thought it was a military operation. Technically, it was a law enforcement operation. There's federal agents on the ground with CAG as they were ripping him out of that building to arrest him. That's a fact, because he was being arrested. We pulled him out of there for that reason. And then again, puppet government kicking out the IRGC, kicking out Hezbollah. You remember the Bella One?
Yeah.
And what country sent a nuclear sub to go try to protect the Bella One? Russia.
Yeah, wow. I mean,
I'm telling you, man, and what I stated isn't a conspiracy theory with the flow of money, with the flow of oil. It's just a fact. It has hurt the Chinese economy, and they've only got 3 months of backup in oil. Their strategic reserves is about 3 months. And we're taking estimates. 3 is what I hear.
It's much more than 3, Matt. And I think
they shut off a hell of a lot of refineries, and their costs are going up. And if anything, if you're looking at it and saying, well, Russia is coming to the table because they had a successful ceasefire, with the Victory Day parade, therefore Putin wants to come to the table, I think you're freaking smoking pot today, man. I like whatever you're smoking, I want some of that. I would love to have some of that so I could live in La La Land too. To be honest.
So you think that this is about China?
I think it's about China, and I think more so, from China looking over at Russia and Ukraine. And I think even when we talk about China, dude, I'm very curious to look it up right now. I'll tell you what it is right now.
So if it is, why is Trump writing statements like Xi is a really good guy for the Chinese economy and people? Why is he?
Because he's not wrong. So because China was doing something smart. So right now, silver's sitting at 81.
Why try to contain them? Why try to undermine
You ready?
them?
I got you. You ready? You ready? Because we do need China. Like we have an external economy, whether we like it or not. We've got an external economy here in the United States of America. We're heavily dependent on a lot of things over there, and we've got a lot of data centers that are over within the Indo-Pac region as well that definitely China can affect. And so silver right now is sitting around like $81 an ounce. 2 months ago, the Department of Defense or Department of War, whatever you feel like calling it these days, officially Department of War, invested $3 billion into a brand new smelter here in the United States in conjunction with JP Morgan and Chase. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Silver is absolutely essential to the U.S. defense industry. When you start talking about every single like precision guided munition that we have, Hellfires, you start talking about freaking cruise missiles, like whatever, the amount of silver that goes in them, it's a lot. We have had a net shortfall over the last 5 years of production versus what we have in our vaults over at COMEX in order to be able to sell. And it's continued to dwindle down. Right now, we're sitting at like 70 to 80 million ounces, something like that, that's actually registered, available for sale, like that can actually go out, that's actually out there. When we talk about inventoried, what other banks are holding on to, there might be another 300 million ounces that are hanging around. But we've had a net shortfall every single year in production, right? So we're using up more. And right now in the energy industry, when we start talking about data centers, when we start talking about electric vehicles, when we start talking about all of these other things, it became a critical mineral. The U.S. labeled it as a critical mineral back in November. It went up on, I want to say it was September when it went up for judgment on the U.S. critical mineral list. And then in November, it actually ends up hitting and being confirmed as a critical mineral for the United States of America. China, over the last year, has been taking vast advantage of arbitrage by soaking it all up, right? Vast. So China has been paying at least $10 an ounce over what we are in the United States. And that is causing all of that metal to move into China. So if China is controlling this critical mineral that we need for our defense production, and by the way, we also need for our infrastructure, data centers and all of that other crap that we're throwing in, and solar panels are now actually having a greater demand. Electric vehicles and the battery demand, all of that crap has a greater demand, and China is sitting on a huge store of it. By the way, so is Russia and India. So you have COMEX here in the United States, and you have the LBMA over, in the EU. India in November cashed in all their paper contracts to the LBMA, almost defaulted the LBMA on silver, which would have caused untold inflation, untold amounts of inflation. COMEX in the United States had to throw silver on an airplane and fly that crap over there to London in order to bail them out, so that they could actually meet the delivery demand. If they had a fail to stand on, like a failure for a stand on delivery, it would have screwed us over. And so we're looking at those things right now. We're going, okay, why is this happening? Why is the Department of War investing in this thing? Because it's not going to be online for the next couple of years. Mexico last year, for example, Mexico came out and stated that they were considering restrictions on silver, right? They were considering the restrictions on silver for as far as exports go. That would have really screwed over the United States of America. Next thing you know, we're waging war with the cartel down there, trying to like do all this crap. That goes away. Venezuela pops off. Now we're in Iran. All these things happen. And now the actual country that's really being hurt is the economy over inside of China, which is already frail. And so it's not a mistake to me that, Putin is talking about wanting to come to the table, because I think they just quite literally cannot afford it anymore. And the U.S., we have to partner with them. China kind of put us in that predicament. That's also why, India is a BRICS nation, right? India is a BRICS nation, but we're really friendly with India, very friendly with India. You remember the attack between India and Pakistan last year, where it looked like they were about to go to war and they were duking it out, and Trump came in and stepped in and made a deal? Who do you think is like the number one buyer of Russian oil?
Well, yeah, I know, but the Indian and Russian relations go back many decades, and it's
right. So if India goes to war with Pakistan, how much more Russian oil are they going to need, and how much more can Russia charge for that oil? Is my point. When oil is 30% of Russia's GDP, 30% of Russia's GDP, and they've got to fund it, and they're heavily sanctioned, and then you create a brand new demand for war, which is going to take a lot of oil. India is going to be soaking all that crap up. The reason, in my opinion, Trump stepped in, because it's not like we wouldn't want India to go in and kill jihadis, right? Like, yeah, go kill terrorists. No, the reason Trump stepped in is because that would have vastly benefited the Russian Empire, vastly. So we end it. Puts them in a really odd predicament to where they're trying to sell their oil at higher rates so they can stay profitable, continue to fund the war.
Yeah, I mean, you've come quite, Matt, you're jumping around a lot, and I think you're connecting things that suit your preferred interpretation of events. If I'm honest,
it's not a preferred interpretation, man. It's a flow of money. China,
well, there's more things than just money. I'm afraid not everything.
It's a lot more than just money. You're right. Everybody's got their own. Everybody's jumping in for their own individual interests in there of all these different nations, but it's a flow of money, and it's choking off economically. Why did Hitler fail at invading Russia during World War II? Logistics. That's it. That's the only reason he failed. He did it in the wintertime. His logistics supply got cut. His troops got cut off. They started to starve and freeze to death. You even had cannibalism that was taking place back
because he went after the Caucasus oil fields instead of committing to just taking Moscow and staying on his. It was
two things. You had the logistical issue from them going in the wintertime, and you also had the U.S. Lend-Lease program. The amount of weapons the United States delivered to the Soviets back then allowed them to stand up and fight back. And so you had this heavy swing in the two that allowed that to happen, right? This huge heavy swing in the two that allowed that to happen.
The expression is, World War II was won with American steel, British intelligence, and Soviet blood.
Love it. Love it.
You agree with that, but that's
I do. Yes, I do. That's huge.
British, 11.5 billion to the Soviets. I'm aware of the history, but as I say, it's also Hitler's strategical decision making was terrible. If I'm honest,
that was horrible. He got too crazy.
With Stalingrad was probably the biggest strategic blunder of his war campaign.
But the point I'm making is logistics is what ends up making or breaking a battle, man. And every single battle, logistics is very important. It's like everybody wants to talk about door kickers and how important door kickers are and everything else. And I think that our society has kind of got lost in that glorification of crap. And I think what we're actually seeing here is strategically, like on a worldwide scale here, strategically a way to try to reset everything, because BRICS was, whether we like to admit it or not, BRICS was getting very powerful. They were recruiting a lot of nations that were getting in there. Egypt, for crying out loud, controls the Suez Canal, right? How important is that?
Yeah, again, but just because a company is built in the US to do with certain metals doesn't, I think, mean that this was all part of a grander scheme by the United States to somehow deal with China through Iran. I fail to connect some of the links that you've made, if I'm honest.
Which one are you missing?
Well, I mean, you've made quite a few. Which I'm not sure.
So Russia on the war front. Let's look at this on one scale, right? Russia on the war front. Trump wants that war to come to an end. He wants that thing to stop. And I think Zelensky's going to have to bite a little bit, and I think Putin's going to have to bite a little bit.
But he
right?
prefers Putin over Zelensky. Let's be honest. He has a favoritism for the Kremlin.
In what way?
Well, he's met. He didn't have an argument with Putin in the Oval Office in February, regardless of how you think Zelensky behaved. Putin, he's always much more chummy with Putin. I think that's
so. You say that
body language and interactions.
So you say that. Do you know what happened immediately following that as a result of that meeting?
Well, yeah, nothing.
No, not nothing. There was something very significant that happened afterwards, and I think most people completely and totally overlook it. U.S. stopped sharing intel with Ukraine for a time period before we switched it back on. Starlink also got killed, but where was Starlink still open at? Ukrainians were bitching about it. It was open over inside Russia. Why? Do you think that was because we favor the Russians?
No, I think Trump has
Again, I would love to smoke what you're smoking. That's a USA controlled company, and we've got data flying over there. What do you think we were doing with that data? Back in 2014.
I'm talking about Trump and his personal relationship.
Oh no, I understand what politics and looking out, but do you judge people by their words, or do you judge people by their actions?
Well, considering that Trump said that this war is about regime change and now it's become about nuclear enrichment and militarization of the IRGC, I'm not sure.
Actions. So actions, right? That's what I want to look at. What's Trump doing? Because as you say, he was getting chummy before he met Putin in Alaska. What did the United States do? We sent 2 nuclear subs and announced the movement of these nuclear subs over off the coast of Russia. That's what the United States did. So just because he's smiling and shaking hands with Putin, we also threatened them with 2 nuclear armed submarines.
That's called politics.
That's not being very nice. How do you think the U.S. would react if Russia did that same thing to us?
Well, they have effectively. The Russians.
They've got their cute little boat down in Cuba that we've been tracking. And the last time they did it, we were tracking it up and down the East Coast, making them, and then they ended up, you know, raising their sub, and it had the damn like sonar panels falling off the side of it.
Come on,
you know,
Matt. You don't think the US always has a sub near, you know, Eastern Russia and Vladivostok? Come on.
I'm sure we do, but we don't announce it. But we don't announce it. There's a difference. We don't announce it. We absolutely don't announce it. We don't. It's not something we do. As a matter of fact, like the movement of our nuclear submarines is very closely guarded. Like that is top secret information where those are going. And we just flat out said, we're moving them in there right now as he's on his way over to come and, you know, try to shake hands. Trump got embarrassed by Putin. I want you to think about this. Trump has a massive, massive ego. Would you agree with that? I think Trump's got some very big narcissistic like personality traits.
Yeah, that's why this war is so ill-advised, because it's being driven by his ego.
Well, I don't think it's being driven by his ego. I don't think it's driven by his ego. I think his ego got hurt.
Matt, he got frustrated with the direction of the peace talks, and he decided to implement Operation Epic Fury, also at the behest.
Hold on. Whoa, wait. State that again.
Well, you heard what I said.
No, I didn't. That's why I'm asking you. I didn't hear it.
He got frustrated with the state of the peace talks in Geneva, and therefore they decided, but that's okay, not they hadn't decided what was the end goal, much like the situation in Afghanistan changed and Iraq. It's all well and good to start a war, but if you don't know how to end it, then it becomes a quagmire. And
so
it seems like
when did the U.S. start moving and stockpiling military equipment, personnel, aerial defense assets into the Middle East? As it wasn't February 28th.
It doesn't matter about the military buildup.
Absolutely it does, because if you're saying his motive, here's why it matters, Pyotr. Here's why it matters. If you're saying I'm looking at it, analyzing his actions, Pyotr. If you say that he got upset because of the talks over in Geneva, the fact is we have to look before that and see what was happening. The fact is, and this is why I put that chart out on January 2nd. The fact is that we're moving assets in long before that, stockpiling them 60 days prior over into that region, and having those negotiations with Iran over in Geneva, just like this, in my opinion. I think there's an alternative motive for why he ended up, you know, doing this new round of talks. And honestly, I think it had to do with the down pilot that we had over inside of Iran, but we were stockpiling stuff over there. You know, the talking point that people have where they say that the reason we ended up launching off Epic Fury when we did is because Iran was about to attack Israel, so the Israelis were going to strike first. And so that's why we went in there.
No, I don't believe that argument.
So I do, but I believe that you have to place it in proper context and frame, which is Iran stated that if the United States ends up bombing them, obviously they're going to attack Israel, whether it's involved or not. We were stock, and the reason they said that was it was way before this was on anybody's radar. I'm sitting here tracking it. The reason they said that is because the amount of stuff that we were stockpiling 60 days prior, and Israel within that is now implicated in our actions. And so during the 12-day war, we were also negotiating with them prior to striking them. And the day of the negotiations, when the 12-day war kicked off, we bombed the piss out of Iran.
You did, but they still have 70% of their stockpiles.
Okay, cool. I'm with you, but we bombed the piss out of them, right?
Well,
so if we bombed them, so put yourself in the IRGC's position. There's a massive buildup inside of the Middle East, right? For 60 plus days, there's a massive buildup inside of the Middle East. Trump made statements that, you know, if Iran keeps killing these people, they're going to go in. Then it turned into enrichment, right? Now it's turning into all of these other things. When you're Iran and you're looking at that and you say, wait a minute, we played this game last year and we were negotiating with the United States of America. And during these negotiations, when we met up with them, we actually had a meeting scheduled for the day they bombed us. Would you sit around and continue to negotiate with the United States? We're not even negotiating. We have demands. And I think that's one of the problems that we have is nobody's being honest. U.S. hasn't changed its demands for Iran. Zero enrichment. They have to give up all their enriched uranium. They have to have limited ballistic missile stockpiles, and they have to stop funding foreign terror organizations. None of that's changed. Like our stances haven't changed.
It's maximalist demands, much like the Russians have and the Ukrainians have. Therefore, it's not a perhaps practical or realistic possibility that the Americans are going to get their desired achievements. And it brings me back to my original counterpoint to you, Matt, which is simply that this war was based about what? Trump on the very day, and I know you're going to make the distinction between words and actions, was about regime change. That's the thing he said on the Saturday after the first airstrikes happened, right? Hours into the first round of military operations. Since then, though, they released a public communication with their demands from the White House. That was 2 weeks into March, and it was regime change wasn't mentioned. It was nuclear enrichment, it was military capacity, Navy destroyed, production facilities, stockpiles, all this sort of stuff. But
the same thing prior to us bombing them.
That's a change of strategic objectives. That shows an inconsistency within the Trump administration.
Nope. The messages that they released, Peter, you're wrong. The messages that they released were exactly the same. You're not wrong in stating Trump you're not hear me out. You're not wrong in stating that he brought up a regime change afterwards. You're not wrong in saying that. Where you're wrong is stating that the US's objectives had changed. You go back and look at the messaging that we were putting out prior to bombing them, all the way back into January when I first started bringing up this crap. It started off, the change in it, if you want to be honest, the change in it, in my opinion, went from just about the zero enrichment and getting rid of their stockpiles to adding on funding FTOs and limiting ballistic missiles. If there's one conspiracy that I believe in, which would be Israel's got to say in this matter, I think that those additional ones on top of enrichment were Israeli demands that they wanted to see limited, not US demands, Israeli demands. And so we just added those kind of into that whole thing because it also jointly benefits us. Why wouldn't we do it?
I'm not saying things can't evolve over time, but what I'm saying is, Matt, that the Iranians are very good at getting away from avoiding some of the destruction. The Americans have made strategical shifts. What happened to arming the Kurds? What happened to taking Karg Island a month ago? That was all the media and everyone was talking about.
We never once stated we were going to take Karg Island. You know who stated we were going to? You know who stated we were going to take Karg Island? Douglas McGregor. Douglas McGregor stated we're going to take Karg Island. A freaking RT shill, right? Never has the U.S. ever done that. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that it would make no strategic or operational advantage for us to take Karg Island. It's a waste of manpower, and it would get people killed. There's no point in doing that. The assets that we actually moved into the region, when we start talking about the military assets that moved in there, we had 2 Marine Expeditionary Units, and we ended up having special operations troops come in, like the 75th Ranger Regiment, and all of those things, right? What that's stated, what that package was for, out of the 10,000 additional troops that moved in there, you have about 4,000 actual trigger pullers that are capable of being put on the ground. Why the hell would we devote that to Karg Island? What does that do for the United States that we couldn't accomplish from the air? If we wanted to shut down Karg Island, we could do it from the air. It's a fact. There's no need to invade it. If you invaded Karg Island, all of that oil infrastructure would be screwed anyways. If the Iranians didn't blow it, so the U.S. didn't get it, then the U.S. would do it in a bunch of freaking crossfire. Like, it would just be collateral damage in an invasion. Not to mention our troops would have zero overhead coverage from the short range Iranian ballistic missiles, not to mention artillery fire and everything else. Like, so why would we
saying that all the reports that we're talking about the 82nd Air Division and 3,000 extra troops were complete non-intention to do anything related to Karg Island?
In no way, shape, or form. What strategic or operational advantage does Karg Island provide that we couldn't accomplish from the air by putting boots on the ground? None. Zero. The first people to bring that crap up, as I stated, were your mouthpieces for RT. That's a fact. Go look it up.
Well, well, then why was it reported? Why was the WSJ or Wall Street Journal, why was every Western media publication talking about it then?
Just because somebody talks about it doesn't make it a fact. How many things has the Wall Street Journal gotten wrong since this thing kicked off? It's not a fact. You know what's a fact? If you want to talk a fact, what's a fact is the U.S. pilot. Hold on, I'm going to tell you. Like, I'm pretty damn good at being like a military strategist. The pilot that got shot down over inside of Iran got shot down 150 miles south of where we evacuated from. There's 2 of them aboard that aircraft. They separated, right? When they eject, they separate. We get one out down the south, and then the other one magically appears 150 miles to the north. And we landed 2 fixed-wing aircraft. Now, I don't know how much you know about these fixed-wing aircraft, but
that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point because you said
here's the interesting point. Here's the interesting point. There's a reason he got moved up there, and I'm not going to be able to tell you or anybody that's listening how we did that. But I promise you, there's ways to do it. Right? SEER School exists for a reason. There's a way that we did that. Okay. The fact I'm trying to make is, because it's publicly available information, is we landed fixed wing aircraft down there. And those fixed wing aircraft that we landed have a certain stretch of airfield that they need to take off and to land. And if you go look at the map at exactly where Iran pointed out this takes place, you'll see what's called a field landing strip cut to that specific specification randomly just south of Isfahan in a very easily controlled environment. Those troops that ended up going down there, in my opinion, burnt one of the field landing strips that we needed to go to Isfahan as either a primary or a backup means of getting in there. Prior to us rescuing that pilot, and I believe the target he was bombing before that was the IRGC's little missile base just south of Isfahan. We were tearing that thing apart. And there was like a 5 or 10 minute in length video that got taken out. I geolocated. I mean, I could put it up on the screen right now if you want. I've got it over in my thing.
About the strategic blunders, Matt, you've completely shifted the conversation.
I'm not shifting the conversation, but I'm trying to tell you. No, this goes into it. Look, man, Pyotr, this goes into it. You're talking about Karg Island, and I clearly stated, and I asked you, what strategic or operational victory can we gain from that? Which is none. But what we can do is we could put those troops on the ground, because you have an estimated 80,000 besieged IRGC paramilitary forces, Artesh, whatever, that are within Isfahan province. You need a very large force to go in there and remove that enriched uranium. It's a fact. You can't just put in a tiny little team.
These are nuances. When my broader point is about the strategic inconsistencies on the United States.
It's not a nuance. It is. This is what I'm telling you. Is it's a strategic consistency.
I'm talking about
a strategic consistency of getting out the enriched uranium.
U.S.
Pyotr, the enriched uranium is either at Isfahan or Pickaxe Mountains, just to the north of that. And what we brought in was a package large enough to take and hold that terrain.
So why not do it?
Get the enriched uranium out. We burnt an airfield. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We burnt one of those field landing strips, rescuing the pilot. You
have air supremacy, do you not? Oh wait, no, you didn't, because an aircraft was shot down.
We did. And hey, look, man, just because someone gets shot in a firefight doesn't mean you're winning the firefight. That's absurd.
No, but it doesn't mean
a field landing strip.
It was so supposed.
Just because one aircraft gets hit doesn't mean we don't have air superiority. Just because one of my soldiers gets shot in a firefight doesn't mean I don't have fire superiority. My ability to maneuver is what equates to whether or not I have that superiority. And we have more than demonstrated our ability to maneuver over Iranian terrain. Just like somebody can get shot in a firefight while you're running around. That doesn't mean I'm pinned down. The enemy can still sneak out and get a couple shots off. That doesn't equate to like fire superiority. But the logistical concern for taking Isfahan, how do you get that field landing strip cut out in the middle of nowhere? That's what our intel assets are busy doing and taking care of. So now we've got to adjust our plans. Now we've got to change things. Now we've got to fix them. And the consistency is, it was very clear that we were maneuvering and we were taking out the targets that would have had a lot of short-range ballistic missiles that were very close to the Isfahan nuclear site. And we burnt a field landing strip. So we're bombing the place that would have been the most logical place for them to respond with the largest buildup of forces and the best case of indirect fire for the IRGC on Isfahan itself, on the nuclear facility. And in addition to that, when that pilot got taken out and had to get rescued, we ended up burning a field landing strip to get him out of there. That equates to having to rework things.
But again, that's the operational and tactical details. It still doesn't disregard the point I'm making, which is strategic, much bigger picture.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is our strategic goals for Iran. One of our main goals was what? To get the enriched uranium out. That was active movement towards getting out the enriched uranium. What ends up happening, because no plan survives first contact. It's a very, very famous saying. No plan survives first contact, not one. And so you end up having to make fragos and adjustments along the way. You cannot predict everything that's going to happen in battle, just like you can't predict what's going to happen the next time you drive to the grocery store. So we have to make changes and adjustments to make these things happen. And unfortunately, at that point in time, we burnt a field landing strip, which very likely was going to be used for the operation to go into
Isfahan. Well, if the United States is as capable as that, then why can't you identify alternatives? If
because
the
it takes time.
Iranian enrichment is that critical, then surely
Because we showed our hand.
Well,
you understand that, right? We showed our hand.
The US
with
is
how
so
we conducted the operation. We showed
powerful. We
our
just
hand.
override the Iranians.
So what you have to do, right? So here's the difficult part. The reason that operation was successful to get that pilot out, and we ended up not getting it to be killed. There's no bodies left behind. You can believe the US story, you can believe Iran's story, it doesn't matter. But we got that pilot out of there. And the reason it was successful is because they knew we were coming to get the pilot, but they didn't know the location and or the time in which we were getting him. Now, when you talk about Isfahan and you talk about the Pickaxe Mountain site, which is just a few clicks away from there, you've got a problem. You've got the site that is known, you just don't know the time, and so it creates a channel, right? It creates like this funnel to where you're able to set up and prepare for it. And what we had done and what we were setting up was a way which the IRGC was clearly not able to figure out what we were going to be doing. They didn't know that that field landing strip existed because we were able to pull our pilot out from there. But we just showed our hand. And not only that, we also showed capabilities of our special operations that I don't even think the world was aware that we were capable of doing. And so now we've got adjustments to our plan to come up with something new. When you're going into a place and the enemy knows you're coming, you better make damn sure you've got a good plan. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. If you want to ram things down a throat like this isn't a movie, it takes time, right? And we lost the element of surprise by showing at least a portion of our hand to make that happen. So now we've got to readjust and develop a new plan. And that also takes time. And what are we doing with this mess inside of the Strait of Hormuz? In my opinion, we're buying time. The same way we were buying time building up U.S. forces, and we weren't even ready to launch the attack. If we were ready to launch the attack, we'd have had more aerial defense assets in the region. But Iran caught on, and they were like, the U.S. is going to bomb us. We might as well start prepping. That's why we get the information that Israel is going to get attacked. And so now we're forced to launch off because it's better that we get momentum going in our direction versus letting them attack us and then us trying to play catch up. And it's the same thing here. Now we're going to take our time. We're going to negotiate. We're going to figure things out, distract, whatever. Our goal hasn't changed. That uranium is coming out one way or the other. Like Trump stated that a million times. There's no ambiguity there. Like he hasn't made any difference in that. That uranium is goal number one for us to get the hell out of there. And at the same time, it's hurting China. It's strangling China. Strangling them economically.
China has systemic economic issues, mate. My background is China. I know China very well. But again, you made a lot of points which are very absolute. And there's no challenging the supremacy of the United States military. But why is it that even the Joint Chiefs of Staff have made statements which are quite clearly trying to put brakes on the success or viability of certain operations?
Can you give an example of his
U.S. staff members, including Jim Mattis?
Can you give an example of him trying to put a brake on our success or trying to back away that the U.S. has been successful?
Certain statements, and then when he says certain other things which are
like what?
Trying to clarify the position.
Like what? Example.
There's been too many statements. You can go and look them up.
You made an assertion. You made an assertion that the commander of the Joint Chief of Staff.
Assertions, but I'm not going to challenge your and everyone.
But I'm asking you for a specific example because I don't agree with your statement. And so since you're making the assertion, it's on you to prove your position, Pyotr.
So, yeah, but
so I'm asking you to please prove your position because right now I just don't agree with your premise altogether. And you can't even give me an example that the commander of the Joint Chief of Staff has backed off.
No, but I haven't agreed with half your premises, but I've given you the benefit of the doubt and the right to speak.
Because I do my research, and I've also listened to the commander of the Joint Chief of Staff on every single press briefing he's given, and I don't get the impression that he's backed off on any sort of success that we've had over there. As a matter of fact, he's done the exact opposite. He has stated our success line by line in almost every single briefing that he's given. So in what way, that's why I'm asking you, in what way has he backed off from his success? Because I can go and I could pull up every single briefing and we can listen to every single one. And he names all of the crap that we have destroyed, all of the targets that we have taken out, some of the direct impacts that they've had. So in what way has he backed off?
When he's recognizing to the point that the Iranians still have a much larger stockpile than the Americans thought they did. When the CIA and other intelligence services are coming out and recognizing the limitations of what the Americans have achieved, unfortunately, those
are going to be leaked reports. What you're referencing to with the CIA would be alleged leak reports of what came out via, I believe it was CNN, right? Not him. And when we talk about what he has stated, it's been the opposite. Our position where
we're trying to emphasize that it wasn't exactly him who said it; it was sort of the CIA and stuff. The point I'm making,
it's an anonymous source familiar. Hold on, it's an anonymous source familiar with the matter, allegedly. Anonymous sources familiar with the matters, allegedly. And here's the other famous thing, which the U.S. doesn't shy away from. Here's the thing: the U.S. doesn't shy away from this. We don't have solid intel assets inside of Iran. Mossad does, not the United States of America, because that hasn't been our actual area of focus. You cannot, and this is the mistake that people make. Intel is very, very rarely 100% for certain on anything. Most of the time, you end up getting pieces of information that you have somebody that's piecing together, trying to draw a picture and state that these are the specific things that are happening. And that's not what happens, right? Like to state that the U.S. is saying 100% for certain, we know that they have X amount that's left. You're never going to get a 100% answer of 100% for certain this is what happened, which is why I was so pissed at the Trump admin last year when they came out, what is it, the next day or the day after, saying, oh, no. We took their stockpile back. We took their stockpile back over a decade. Like we set their enrichment program back a decade. There's no freaking snowball's chance in hell they could have known that in the following day. Not a snowball's chance in hell. Only way you're going to know that for sure, certain, is if you got somebody underground. If somebody's actually able to go in there and confirm that. They're blowing smoke. And we look at that assessment. We can say, look, one of two things is true. Either one, the U.S. is bolstering, which I think this administration does a lot of, right? Like I am not a mouthpiece for this administration. I shit on them all the time. You do not get to state that without having solid intelligence on the ground. And it's biting us in the ass today because now the Trump administration has to admit that either A, they lied last year, that we didn't destroy it all, because now Trump's referring to it as nuclear dust that's under the ground. We got to go get the nuclear dust. But then we're also stating that, we've got, intel images, or maybe it wasn't the U.S. That was another source, excuse me. But we need to go and get this enriched uranium out that allegedly we destroyed last year, right? That it's nuclear dust is what Trump's calling it, right? The uranium dust that's buried underneath the ground. But at the same time, Arghachi, Iran's foreign minister, what Witkoff said in the last meeting that the United States ended up having with them, what Steve Witkoff said was that Arghachi told him that they have 460 kilograms of highly enriched 60% uranium. 460. That, like, within days of us bombing Iran back in June, the International Atomic Energy Agency went in and conducted an inventory, and their count was 440 kilograms. So either Iran, well, one of two things can be true. IAEA got it wrong, and there was actually 460 kilograms that Iran had back in June, or IAEA got it right, Trump lied, and they were able to enrich an additional 20 kilograms of enriched uranium by the time we started bombing them again at the end of February. Either way, with us going in and stating that Iran is an imminent threat, that we can't allow them to continue to enrich uranium, all this other crap, we got lied to. Like there's no going around that, right? Because our troops are not going to go in there and just conduct. I mean, let's be honest here. What are we going to do? Go in and conduct a mining operation and just scoop up all of the dirt and load it on semis and drive it over into Iraq till we figure out what we want to do with it? That's lunacy. No, we're going to go in there. We're going to blow things in place. We're going to load it up and take it out. So it's not like it's just dust scattered around and buried in the mountain. And we're going to go conduct some massive excavation operation, 100 meters underground, and collect all of the dirt and truck it into another country. That's lunacy. It's there. It's in a pile, and we need to go get it out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about getting it out. Right? Like, tell me if I'm crazy here. Like, you're not sending in special operations troops to conduct a massive excavation operation to move a bunch of nuclear dust out of the country. It's impossible.
Yeah, I'm just looking through. So, back to our debate about Kane and Hegseth. When Hegseth says that Iran's been obliterated, and then Kane says we're actually still assessing the operational impact.
Correct. Yeah. So assessing the operational impact. So assessing operational impact takes time. You need to
assess it if it's been obliterated, would you?
That's not true.
To assess.
That's not true. That's not true. Well, so you have Hegseth. I've talked about this before, and I said the United States, particularly the Defense Department, particularly the Trump administration, Hegseth's bad about it, Trump's bad about it. They're both political figures, right? Hegseth, the Secretary of War, political figure appointed by Donald Trump. The chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff is a military figure And every single report about that man is that he gives honest assessments of where things are at. Those assessments take times. We have battle damage assessments for specific things that you go look at. But when we start talking about the broader array of their strategic targets, particularly, I'll send you the products if you want. I'll give you access to the Google map that I put together on all the different caves.
I've got another one for you.
But when you're doing that, hold on, when you're doing that, you have to assess the viability of those strikes. And that's going to go down to the viability of those strikes is going to go down to how the IRGC reacts. Just because we hit a cave entrance and we can see that from the sky, and maybe it looks like that cave collapsed, that doesn't mean that it's one, or it doesn't mean that the entire cave is gone. It could just be a couple rocks at the beginning, are covering it. And all they got to do is take an excavator, move some rocks, and then it's back in operation. So it takes time to assess. It's not an instantaneous, we know this for a fact.
Sure.
And then a lot of it also goes down to human intelligence. So, and this is the mistake that people make. A lot of it also goes down to human intelligence. Mossad's got agents on the ground. I'm sure the agency does. I'm sure the DOD does as well. All of those agents come together and you compile those reports. And that's, again, not something that happens overnight in an area, in a nation where you have the internet completely and totally shut off. How do you get those communications out? It takes time. So we can't just sit here and assume that instantaneously, and that's where I shit on the Trump administration 5 minutes ago, saying, how dare they claim that the nuclear program was obliterated the day afterwards? Because there's not a snowball's chance in hell we would have known that. And I'll say the same thing to Hegseth right now. But Kane's at least
like that. But
I'm what you call intellectually honest. But Kane's at least giving the truth when he says we're still assessing.
Yes,
that's different. You have political statements. It's political statements versus.
What started this tangent, Matt, was that because you said you asked me for an example because you don't think that there's been contrasts. But when Hegseth says, "quote We have devastated Iran's military infrastructure," and then Kane afterwards says, "quote It would be premature to make broader strategic conclusions," that is a difference in rhetoric. I know one's a broader, one's a military personnel, but the point
it's not. So what is his whole statement? So what is? Hold on. What is his whole statement? And what? No, Pyotr. What is his whole statement? And what was the date? And what was the question asked? All of those things are important to context.
Because you simply asked me for a very simple question, which was
I did. I said, so now put that statement in context.
No, you didn't ask for context. You simply asked me to give you an example where they different.
Right, but all you gave was one line. All you gave was one line out of an entire press briefing, and you can't even give me the question that he was asked.
If you want,
you can't even give me, Pyotr. It's intellectually dishonest. If I'm being intellectually honest, and you can admit to that, and I say you're not even giving me the question that he was asked, and you're giving me one line, and I know he just doesn't speak one-line answers. Give me the entire statement. Put it in context.
You asked for.
Pyotr, I asked for the examples. You gave me a half-assed example.
I'm giving you two.
That's not intellectually honest.
It is. It is very honest.
You even know the date he made that statement.
Yes.
What was the date he made the statement?
Let me find it. But I'll remind our audience of what the original.
So you don't know the date that he made the statement. It could have been right now until you read it. It could have been March 1st.
No, but
you say, I don't know. No, it's a fact. You don't know the date, Pyotr, which is why I asked for context.
You asked me for a very specific example. So
I did. And that's not specific when you don't even know the date he said it. If he said it on March 3rd, that's completely different than if he said it on freaking April 15th.
But I'm trying to,
difference, Pyotr.
The difference.
No, I'm trying to educate you on being intellectually honest. That's not intellectually honest. You don't even know the damn date he made the statement. What's the date?
Matt, relax. It's all in good.
What's the date, Pyotr? Come on,
Matt. Mate,
stop goalpost shifting. What's the date he made it? I just made a valid point. If he said it on March 1st, it's totally different than if he said it on April 15th, and you don't even know the date.
Matt, so this debate started because
Pyotr, what's the date? Stop shifting the goalposts. What's the date of his statement? You're asserting it as a fact that shows that he's going against Hegseth's statement. What's the date of that statement? What's the date of Hegseth's?
I'm going to reiterate my framing before I answer your question, because I'm not going to be steered on the conversation. I'm going to have the conversation equally. Okay. So we started this debate because you wanted me to give an example of when Kane and Hegseth disagreed. Now,
no, I said, give an example. No. That's not what I said when they disagreed. No, Pyotr, rewind it. What you said was that what you said is the chairman of the Joint Chief. That's not what you said. And that's not what I said. What you said was the chairman of the Joint Chief was backing off that we're doing anything good, that he's moving away from it. Stay intellectually honest. Stop.
I am, but I'm not gonna.
You're not. You just said no. You just no, Pyotr. You just stated something that wasn't factual, which was something that I said, and I didn't say that.
Doesn't matter. I'm not going to.
It does matter. Facts matter. Facts matter. Just like the date of a statement matters. You can't put words into my mouth.
I'm not going to answer your question until I'm ready to. Okay. I know that you want to get your answer.
No, Pyotr. What you can't do is put words into my mouth and be intellectually dishonest.
But if
the way you framed it, no, Pyotr, Pyotr, you're pissed because I'm calling you on your shit. The way you framed it, was that no, Pyotr, be honest. The way you framed it was that the U.S. and that the chairman of the Joint Chief was somehow backing off as if we haven't done a good job over there. That's how you framed it. And you can't even give me a date for that
because I'm not going to be bullied into doing so.
I'm not bullying you into anything. You're the one that asserted it as a fact, and you won't even give the context.
Matt,
that's intellectually dishonest, Pyotr.
No, it's not about intellectual dishonesty.
Yes, it is. That's 100% what it's about.
No, it's not.
Because it makes a difference if he said it on March 1st versus April 15th. Two huge spreads.
Doesn't matter, mate. Now we're in a different.
It doesn't matter to you, but it matters to everybody with half a brain, Pyotr.
No, Matt. What matters is that you need to chill and you need to allow someone else to speak.
What matters is you being intellectually honest. I have no respect for somebody that's going to gaslight my viewers. Because I'm also streaming this. You're gaslighting my viewers and you're not being intellectually honest.
You're dominating the conversation and talking over me, which I think
because I'm demanding you back up your statement and you're refusing to do so.
I'm not going to be demanding.
I'm not going to give information. I'm not going to get bullied. Why is it being bullied? Are you some sort of a victim now, Pyotr? Because you can't back up your own date? You didn't even have the date when I initially asked you.
Why are you gaslighting me?
I'm not gaslighting you. I'm asking you for a date, and you keep changing things. You're putting words into my mouth, and then you try stating that I stated something different than what I actually did. And the whole thing has to do with your statement that the U.S. was somehow backing away, that the commander of the Joint Chief was somehow making it seem like we're not doing so good and we're backing off from our victorious statements. That's bullshit.
And very intentionally not being quite as dogmatic and absurd with his statements.
No, you're being absurd. You're being very broad. I asked you for specific examples. You didn't get specific. You gave me a quote out of easily a broader context quote, and you won't even give the date, Pyotr. That's intellectually dishonest.
No,
that's intellectually dishonest.
Dishonesty. It's about holding
intellectually dishonest. No, it's intellectually dishonest. Then give the date and be honest.
I will give you the date if you stop shouting over the top of me.
I'm waiting for the date.
Okay, keep waiting. I'm not going to do it at your beck and call, Matt. I'll do it when I'm good and ready.
Oh, okay. Then you're not intellectually honest, man.
No,
you're sitting here trying to say that no, it's because I don't like the way you are. So what are you, my fucking mother? Are you my mom now? Is that who you are? Are you trying to teach me a lesson? Is that what you're doing?
I'm trying to get you to like.
Well, you're not my mom and you're not my therapist. So just state the date already.
I will do so when you stop like being so animated.
I'm not doing anything. I'm telling you to state the date and stop lying to people. Stop being intellectually dishonest.
I'm not lying. I'm just like, mate, just like
you're being intellectually dishonest. You're being intellectually dishonest.
I'm not being dishonest. I'm just trying to make you like get a sense of the conversation.
Then end it and make the statement of what day he made the statement on, and then say the whole thing in context. State the question from the reporter. Read off his whole statement.
Nah, when this whole thing
started, date, question, statement. All three of those things go into context for what you just said.
Yeah, it was done because we were talking about the situation with Kane and Hegseth, and I've already made it clear. Kane was trying to clarify Hegseth's position. Maybe you don't like the wording that I used in Walk Back, but Kane has
said that he was going away from the U.S.'s victory and being a great success. That's what you said. And I said that every single statement, every single press briefing I've heard, he sits there and he breaks down all of the different targets that we destroyed and all of the success that the United States has had. And so now you bring up a statement with not a date, without the question in front of it, stating that we're still conducting assessments. What is it in occurrence to?
You are digging out of bombed out and devastated facilities. You can't reconstitute. Daniel Kane. Battle damage assessments are ongoing. It would be way too early to comment.
Okay. And what is this particular facility?
I don't know, mate. I'm not going to look.
Okay, so this is why you look stupid right now, Pyotr, and this is why you didn't want to bring it up, because it backs up and it reinforces exactly. No, it backs up and it reinforces every single. No, it reinforces every single thing that I just stated. The hell it doesn't. That intelligence takes time to come out, that you have to watch and you have to wait. You tried using that statement. No, Pyotr, stop, because this is why you're gaslighting people. Because that particular statement, the hell with that. It's live stream, and I'm going to make you look like a jackass when I cut these clips, because you tried to use that statement as if the United States. No, Pyotr, you tried to use that statement. Pyotr, you're intellectually dishonest. You tried to use that statement as if the U.S. was somehow backing off that we're doing a great thing. And it turns out it's for Pyotr. No. It turns out it's for one particular facility. One facility, not the entire war. That's intellectually dishonest. Stop it. That's intellectually dishonest.
No, it's not.
It's intellectually dishonest of you.
Right for Hegseth to say that it's devastated if they don't have the full assessments, man.
If Hegseth is stating that Iran's military is devastated, and you pull a statement from the commander of the Joint Chiefs that's talking about one target, that's talking about one target that we're currently assessing, doesn't change Hegseth's statement, and that's why it's intellectually dishonest.
It's not intellectually dishonest. You just don't.
Yes, it is. It's apples and oranges.
No,
the overall IRGC and the reduction of the amount of ballistic. The overall IRGC, the amount of ballistic missiles fired, et cetera, that we have decimated the IRGC. And you take one facility and try to, apply the commander of the Joint Chiefs statement for one facility to the entire IRGC, that is intellectually dishonest.
No, it's not.
Intellectually dishonest. The hell it's not. And now it's on record. Now it's on record. You're like, how the hell does anybody trust you?
Man, you can't just say that I'm intellectually dishonest.
I can do that, Pyotr, and you can't change history. That's why I'm glad this was live streamed and everybody gets to see it. You are intellectually dishonest.
No, mate. So you're just making it personal because I'm disagreeing with you.
I'm not making it personal. I'm calling you on your bullshit. Upset about it. And you're trying to act as if me being upset somehow makes it different when you just try to gaslight people. And I called you on your bullshit.
No, it's not gaslighting. It's an intellectual disagreement.
It's not a disagreement. It's a fact. And when I cut this video and I show it to everybody, they're all going to agree. You're intellectually dishonest, man.
No,
you just tried to with a statement about one facility you tried to apply to the entire war.
You tried to dominate the conversation by then
it's intellectually dishonest, Pyotr.
No, you're intellectually dishonest. Okay, we'll reframe it.
How was I being intellectually dishonest? In what way have I been intellectually dishonest so far?
And you don't allow the
other in what way have I been intellectually dishonest? I'm going to sit here quietly. Tell me how I've been intellectually dishonest. Go ahead.
Because you keep moving the goalposts. This entire exchange.
I didn't move the goalpost at all.
And you just asked me. You just said you would stop talking.
How did I move the goalpost? How did I move the goalpost?
If you stopped interrupting, then I would attend to. But you keep doing so because you don't like what I'm saying, and you don't like what I'm saying.
To you, it's recorded, so keep going. How did I move the goalpost, Pyotr?
Because the original conversation, I mean, you would have got your answer about half an hour ago if you'd actually let me finish my point before interrupting. But and getting so
you wouldn't have used it if you'd have actually known what the hell you were saying and what it was in reference to. Until I called you on the bullshit. But keep going.
Mate, you look at things very unipolar, and clearly your support for Trump is blindsiding you to the bigger picture here. Where there are a lot of
support for Trump? I just called him a liar. What support? Yeah, what blind support do I have for Trump that's blinding me? I'm the only one here that's been intellectually dishonest. Maybe your hate for Trump is blinding you in the things that you said. Because I'm open and I shit on him when it's earned. You just lied to people, and you were intellectually dishonest and used a statement out of context to try to validate that the U.S. is somehow losing the war, Pyotr. That's what you did.
I don't think it's very useful to attack people and say
I'm not attacking you. I'm telling the truth. Are you a fucking liberal? Are you a whiny ass liberal? Are you a little schoolgirl? Did I really attack you, or did I tell you to your face that you're a lying piece of shit? I told you to your face that you're being a lying piece of shit. That's not attacking you. That's being honest. That's honesty, Pyotr. That's honesty. Telling you that you're lying. Telling you that you were using statements out of context and telling you to your face is something that men do. I don't go behind your back
I didn't do anything. I called you on your crap and you don't like it.
Not really, mate. I'm not
and
that.
You can't turn around and victimize yourself and state that I'm attacking you for clearly stating in plain English that you tried gaslighting people. You took a statement out of context and you tried to apply it to make the United States look bad in the war with Iran. That's what you did.
You just labeled me a liberal, which is not very nice because I
asked you if you were a liberal because you're acting like one.
No, you asked
it's a fact. You're acting like a liberal saying I'm attacking you. I'm not attacking you. I'm telling the truth. That's not attacking you.
Dude,
if I tell the truth, that's not attacking. That's simply telling the truth.
Dude,
and putting a proper label context, such as gaslighting and lying, is not intellectually dishonest. It's not an attack. It's honesty, and it's telling the truth. And you don't like it. And so you have to victimize yourself and claim I'm attacking you, Pyotr. That's a joke.
I'm not that bothered. I wouldn't have invited you.
Go buy some tampons, dude, and come back to the negotiating table.
Matt, I'm not that bothered, mate. You're the one who's shouting and your body language and the gestures are very heated. I'm not that. I'm pretty chill, actually. Also, like, I wouldn't have invited you if I was a liberal and wanted to stay in my safe space. Let's be honest.
So why do you claim that I attacked you when all I did was tell the truth about your statements and your mischaracterization thereof and the gaslighting of them? Why did you hold on to that information so long about the context that it was in? Because I would have found it eventually and called your ass out on social media for it. That's why.
You didn't
do shit.
That's why.
I would have. If you would have given it up, you know I would have ended this shit and I'd have called you out on social media. And you'd have caught hell for it.
I'm not
and then you finally come out with it. And then you finally come out with it and are like, oop, now I look like a jackass because it doesn't apply to the whole war.
I'm looking at my comments. I've got a lot of support right now. There's a lot of people who don't think I'm a jackass.
No way. Your followers support you? You don't say. What do you think mine are going to say about you?
Oh, I've already seen some of them actually agree with me as well.
Because they're stupid. What do you think mine are going to say about you? What do you think the internet's going to say when I put it out there?
Some of yours have said you need to chill. I've seen them.
None. They're going to say good job chewing his ass because he's a retard. Good job because he tried to gaslight the population.
Matt, you know I'm not a retard. As much as you disagree with my position.
Then why would you use that statement to try to support overall generalized war when it's one facility?
I never said it was one facility.
Because of high intelligence?
Matt, what are you talking about? This entire conversation.
What am I talking about? I'm talking about you using a statement from the commander of the Joint Chief of Staff about a strike assessment on one facility that you tried to use to validate the entire war somehow being some type of a failure or him backing off that the U.S. has had great success. So you're stupid or you're intellectually dishonest. Pick one.
No. You have a desire to want to push through on a certain point. And if you
I'm not pushing through on a certain thing, I'm holding you to it. It's called holding your feet to the fire. You're either stupid or you're intellectually dishonest.
No, I'm not, mate.
Which pick one? And what's the other option? That you came unprepared for this debate?
You dominate.
What's the other option, Pyotr? Pyotr, besides being stupid or intellectually dishonest, what's the other reason you would reference a statement for one facility and ongoing assessments for one facility that you attempted to apply for the war as a whole?
Matt, you said you wanted a date and a specific statement. So I gave you both, and then you changed the parameters
in regards to your original claim. Okay? In regards to your original claim,
you are digging out out of bombed out and devastated.
No, what was your original claim, Pyotr? Because I'm going to take it and I'm going to clip it. What was your original claim?
Mate, the original conversation was our disagreement over the military and political interpretations of this war. Kane has been
so the war as a whole, the U.S.'s success as a whole. That's the context. The U.S. success as a whole. And you attempted to justify that with an isolated statement about an ongoing assessment for one facility.
You wanted me to give you an example where Kane and Hegseth
where he backed off, and I will go back and I'll take your original statement. Pyotr, I'm going to take your original statement so you can deny it all you want. I'm going to take your original statement. You can deny it all you want. You attempted to make it as if it was the entire war as a whole that Kane was backing off of. You tried to make it seem as if it was the entire war as a whole that Kane was backing off of. And you took one strike assessment on one facility that we were still gathering intel on at the time of that question. And you attempted to apply that as if it meant the entire Operation Epic Fury. That's intellectually dishonest. It's either intellectually dishonest or
how many
stupidity.
times are you going to use this phrase? Because I think you should try and find something else to say. Okay, you may well try and win other intellectual debates with other people by talking through them.
Pyotr, it's not an intellectual debate. Listen, it's not an intellectual debate. Clearly, I'm smarter than you. Clearly, I'm smarter than you, and clearly, I caught you in your bullshit.
Why are you measuring dick sizes, man? Come on, you're better.
I'm not measuring dick sizes. I'm calling you what you're being, which is intellectually dishonest.
Dude, who talks like that? What
Me,
is that?
I talk like that.
Well,
and maybe in your little liberal pool with your little girls that you hang out with online that just lick your cock every day and try to tell you that you're doing everything correct. And they're your little cheerleading squad. Don't call you on your own bullshit. My followers call me when I get things wrong, just like I'm calling you on it. So maybe you need to stop living in your own echo chamber, Pyotr. You were wrong. You used an out of state. You used an out of context statement to try to justify your original claim. I asked you to justify the claim, and you didn't. You used a individual strike as a question about an individual strike to justify all of Epic Fury. It's recorded, Pyotr. It's recorded. It's recorded, Pyotr.
It doesn't matter. I know it's recorded, and people will see how absurd you've been behaving with.
I'm not being absurd. I'm not being absurd. I'm just refusing to have a conversation with somebody that continues to lie and try to move their goalpost and slowly back away from their original statement, Pyotr. It's bullshit.
Not backing away. Just challenging you.
You are backing away from it. No, you're not challenging my intellect. If anything, you're trying to insult my intelligence, and you're trying to insult the intelligence of everybody listening.
I'm trying to make
that's what you're doing.
Battles, mate. It's very intellectually lazy. Ha! He left. Oh wow! I've never had someone leave before. Wow. I don't really know what to say to that. Guys, I like to debate. That's the first time I've really ever had someone quite so enraged. I look, from my perspective, I'm just going to try and process what's just happened. I have a lot of respect for Matt. I think he's an incredibly experienced military individual, and I think he is very on point with a lot of things. Unfortunately, that's unfortunate. It's not reflective of what I look for on these sorts of things. And if I'm honest, I don't know. It's difficult. That's never happened before. I debate a lot of people. I'm trained in debate and have done it. Background. I'm not a military person. Okay, I haven't served, and that's why I'll always be hugely respectful to those who put themselves in harm's way for the safety of their nation, communities, and everything. However, Matt was very challenging to speak to. He talks very forthrightly, which is good. It's good to be confident, but he dominates. And even when I would try to interject way through early on in the conversation, I'm not going to make this personal. Because this is the first time me and Matt had debated, and I was very keen to get him on because I thought we'd have a great chat. And for most of it, the first half it was, but I'm disappointed that it's resulted in that. To be honest, I wasn't sure how to get out of it. I didn't think he'd rage quit, but yeah, basically for the first 45 minutes, Matt spoke for most of it, and then we continued debating elements. Where I got a little bit frustrated and decided to challenge him was on Kane versus Hegfeth. Now, I'm very critical of the US's war with Iran, personally. I don't agree with Matt that this is all part of a broader strip plan for China, as much as he made some decent points about Venezuela and Russia and so on. China's in a much better position than he said. The economy is not good, but it's not been good for a long time. And China is winning like a lot from this war reputationally. Are they prone to challenges? Of course they are. Do they have reserves? Yes. Are they running out? Yes. Is Iran winning? No. Are they in a terrible position? Yes. But anyway, the point where this whole shitstorm happened was simply because I made the phrase, you can find it, I think it's around 50 minutes. I said, walk back. Maybe that wasn't the best framing to use. But the point I was trying to make was that the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, is always much more measured in his framing of things. Pete Hegseth comes out, Defense Secretary or whatever, Secretary of War. Pete Hegseth comes out and he speaks in absolute statements. He speaks with, the facility has been destroyed. The devastation. Now, the specific, and then I decided whilst he was Matt was going off on Karg Island and the search and rescue operation by the US military, I was looking up statements on a couple of different websites just to clarify. Now there were a few. So the one that I readily read out was Pete Hegseth said on March 13th, which was the US states is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military. And Dan Kane said afterwards, battle damage assessments are ongoing. Now, is that walking back? I mean, maybe not fully walking back, but it's definitely not sort of supporting fully Hegseth, right? If something is being decimated, then assessments are largely conclusive. They don't necessarily need to be ongoing. And Dan made Matt made the point, which I guess is fair, that in the first couple of weeks, obviously, it's going to be intense to get that kind of intelligence out. But the reason which was so problematic is he very specifically just wanted a date. He just wanted a date and the statement. And then when I gave him the date of the second statement, which I read out, or I'll read out in a second, I said, I was just answering the question that he'd given, which was, give me the date. Okay, April 16th, 2026. And then he wanted more information. So he was moving the goalposts. He kept reframing the question, or reframing what he was challenging me on, so that he could catch me out. Because I wasn't willing to do that. And basically when he was just saying, come on, give me the date. And when he's using his hands and pointing, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna hold this, and I'm just gonna wait. I'm not going to give him his answer until he, one, like, takes a pause, and two, just like, lets me properly answer the question. You can see sort of half an hour ago, if you rewind the video, there were multiple moments where I tried to cut in and he just keeps talking through me. So at this point I was like, okay, I'm just going to talk through him as well, or I'm just gonna keep saying the same thing. And then that's when he started reiterating intellectual dishonesty, because that was the only point he could do. And if I'm honest, that's when he started personalizing it, and he didn't like the fact that I was calling him out on that. I don't think he liked the fact that I was saying it was attacking, because it was an attack. And then he says that I'm gaslighting him, which I'm not. I'm challenging him on his points. I was trying to actually steer the conversation back to the subject matter, not about how our debate was going. It's a classic tactic that people use to try to win the argument, by simply reorientating the focus of the argument from the actual topic in hand to the people having the debate. It's something that other people who I think are despicable, as I say, I have a lot of respect for Matt, but there are some other people that I've debated on X and other places which are very unpleasant people, who are genuinely intellectually dishonest, and they use the same tactic, which is they'll pick up something that you said, or they'll pick up something how you phrased it, or the sound of your voice, or something personal, right? And they try to frame the argument not about the subject matter, but about the person debating the subject matter. It's a subtle shift, but it is an effective one for people who aren't following it. And so you have to be very attentive, right? You have to be really focused to ensure that you're not, because a lot of people, they'll be I don't want to use the word bully, maybe that was too aggressive to define what Matt was doing, but he was trying to push me into a certain thing, like, give me the date, answer the question, do that, I want to hear from you in this way. And I wasn't willing to do that, and he didn't like the fact that I wasn't willing to do that. Sorry, I'm just grabbing my cable because my laptop's about to die. But yeah, he didn't like the fact that I wasn't willing to basically just play ball, and I was going to remain composed or whatever. And I was laughing, not because I'm sort of intimidated or whatever. I was just, some people cope with crazy moments in different ways. And I was just laughing because I thought it was a bit ridiculous, to be honest. How heated it was, the whole debate was getting, because of some, details, right? The broader point that I was trying to make was simply that the US administration has changed the objectives. And Matt was trying to emphasize that, as someone with a military background, that of course you adjust your objectives, which is okay. I fully understand that, but it seems problematic to be putting US personnel potentially in harm's way if you are changing your objectives in a sudden moment. If the war is about regime change, then you can work towards your operational and tactical maneuver, whatever choices, with that longer term strategic objective in mind. And the fact that we haven't heard things about Karg Island, we haven't heard things about the Strait of Hormuz like they've said they wanted the Navy blockade to achieve something. Project Freedom is a very good example, which I wanted to bring into the conversation, but Matt wouldn't allow me to do that. I wanted to ask Matt about Project Freedom. Simply, Trump had instigated it on Monday last week, right? And to me, that was okay, that happened. But the miscommunication between the Iranians, to be fair, the Americans were very clear in their positioning over the week. But the fact that Project Freedom was then discontinued 2 days later, surely that can't be a great thing to do. It surely, I don't know, maybe Matt would provide me with some details that would counter this, but just from my perspective, if you're going to implement something like Project Freedom, which carries a lot of potential consequences for the duration of the war, it puts a lot of personnel on the US and US assets on the different vessels at risk, surely you're not going to U-turn on that and discontinue it very quickly. The whole point of the exchange, was it on Wednesday, Thursday, when the proper military buildup happened, was because one of the US vessels was trying to, or was it two of them? They were trying to go back through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians decided to launch rockets. Now, that they were agitated by that because, as far as I think they understood, the Project Freedom wasn't happening. So it's this sort of shifting in the priorities in such a short space of time that I think is part of the problem. And I don't think, regardless of the military political relationship between Kane and Hegseth, I mean, what I find difficult about debating, what I found difficult about that debate was that Matt was treating me as though I don't know the difference between the military and political operations, how a politician works, and how a very senior member, the most senior member of the US military works. I do. I'm not expecting. He'd be out of his job tomorrow if General Dan came onto the cameras and said, yeah, they're being blown to shit. I'm not expecting a military personnel to do that. That's obvious. I think Matt thought I didn't know that, which, I mean, I don't need to be told that. I know that from just the difference I'm making is that Hegseth talks in such extreme ways that he that there has to be a clarification by the military position when Trump says that something has been, and to Matt's credit, yes, he did acknowledge that he's been very critical of the Trump administration. I was never questioning his ability to be objective like that. My problem was that he kept pushing me to do as I say, I'm not even talking about the subject matter anymore. This is what's most frustrating, if I'm honest. It's not even that we disagreed. I don't care about that. It's about that we couldn't have a civilized exchange. It got very heated, and then one person tries to push the other to do a certain thing. The other one's not willing to do that because they want to try to keep the conversation in a certain way, and he wants his answer, and he wants me to play ball of which I'm not going to do. I did it a couple of times and I was like, no, you know, like, I'll give you the date when you take a breath, which he refused to do. I'm quite impressed that he spoke that intensely all that time. And now he says he's going to clip it. I mean, if he does clip it and he clips out of context, then I'll clip another version of him out of context and we can have a shit show. Yeah. Anyway, I'll end this by simply saying he wanted a date. So I gave him April 16th, 2026. So 3.5 weeks ago. And he said, Pete Hegseth said, you are digging out of bombed out and devastated facilities. You can't reconstitute. Dan Kane said on that point, battle damage assessments are ongoing. It would be way too early for me to comment. Hegseth speaks with strategic absolutism. Kane warns that the assessment is incomplete, that it's too early to comment. That is, okay, you don't like a disagreement framing. That is not a conclusive support of what Hegseth said. That is, you cannot disagree with that. But because Matt interrupted me as I was actually trying to read out the bloody statement, he still interrupted me on that point. He misheard me when I said facilities. He thought I said facility. And so that triggered him to go off onto this entire, rant about me being intellectually dishonest because I only am talking about one specific facility. That was never the case. And as I say, I mean, he can point to all the examples where I was being intellectually dishonest. Well, I can point to all the occasions where he kept interrupting me and wouldn't allow me to actually finish my bloody statement, which he would have then noted that it was actually very different to what he assumed it was. I'm retaining my composure because, trust me, I could be a lot more blunt about it, and you probably saw that a couple of times during our exchange. But anyway, yeah, it just be that a lesson to those of you watching, a lesson of how to not engage, whether or not you think, if some of you are watching from Matt's channel, I don't know, or whatever, if he's still connected on his medias. I don't disagree with Matt on quite a lot of what he says. But what I will disagree with is when he's making absolutist statements about certain things. He looks at things quite, I think, unidimensionally in the military sense. Yes, he's talked about the bigger picture and the money, but he made some categorically incorrect claims about China and Russia. He knows about the US military, for sure, but I know about Russia, and I know about the Russian economy, and I know about my relative expertise, and he was wrong on those. But we couldn't broach those topics because he wouldn't give me the opportunity to do so. And I tried to be respectful by, allowing the person to talk and finish their statement. If you watch my interviews, I tend to just allow the person to make their question, answer the question uninterrupted, so that they can get their full intellectual, express themselves completely. But after a while, Matt was dominating so much, and like when he's talking about the Lend-Lease program, that's right, but I know the exact figures. It was 11.3 billion for the Soviets. It was 32.5 billion for the British. No one's questioning that, those details, but he made a couple of things about the Soviets and the Russians which was just not right. But I let it slide because I wanted to sort of try to keep the conversation on track. But after a while, I was like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. I'm going to interrupt or be a little bit more. This is the problem. You try to interrupt the person, or you try to find a pause, right, when he's taking a sip of water or taking a moment to breathe, where you're like, okay, so let me ask you on this. You try to find a natural moment, right, to interject so you can keep the conversation on, steering the conversation. It was impossible for a large proportion of it. So I was like, okay, I'll just jump in. And even when I tried to jump in, he would continue talking through. And it's like, okay, keep going. But then when he was talking, when he got very insistent that I share him, was like, okay, I'm going to be a lot more like, okay, I'm not going to be spoken over the top of again. And then it just turned into a yelling match, and it was absurd. Shame, really. I was looking forward to it, but yeah, I don't know. Bizarre, to be honest. I had a debate once when I was at school, and there was this kid who just waved. Well, he was doing a lot of the same things that Matt was doing. If I'm honest, he was using his hands a lot, pointing, raising his voice, reiterating the same point, trying to move the goalposts. Whether or Matt liked that or not, he was doing that, and then he makes it personal. I was getting quite annoyed actually when he labeled me a liberal, when he said I'm an idiot or whatever. That he's, and also, what was that about? When he said I'm clearly more intelligent than you. What? And then so I'm like, what are we measuring dicks now? And he's like, what? You said what? I'm not measuring. What are you talking about? Well, that is a literal dick measuring competition. By saying categorically I'm more intelligent than you. Why? What's the point in that? What? Because you're older and you've had on-field experience? Okay, I mean, sure, there are certain things that you can speak to that I can't, but I don't think it's necessary to make such comments like that. And there was another thing when he was talking about the whole situation between the US and Russia, and he's sort of talking about Trump's relationship to Putin. And then I just found it quite frustrating that he sort of was saying that I should read up on stuff. There was another thing that he was doing, which I can't remember. It's also 10 to midnight here, so that's pretty frustrating, because I'm now wide awake when I was hoping to have a nice chill fireside chat with Matt and wind it down. But what was the other thing he was doing? There was another technique he was doing, or another thing he was doing. He was reiterating dishonesty. Just just a lot of rage bait, just a lot of gaslighting, trying to say, oh, that was it. He was trying to sort of incorporate the emotional card that I'm gaslighting everyone, and sort of win the argument by talking about the emotional side, which I didn't really understand why that was necessary to do that. What's the point of saying that it's I'm being intellectually dishonest, but then I'm also gaslighting, and then he says that I'm a liberal and I hang out with all my libtard friends on the internet. It got quite nasty, actually, didn't it? I don't know. Should I keep this up? What do you guys think? What a crazy conversation. Anyway, those of you watching, thanks very much. Don't really know what to say, to be honest. As I say, there was a moment when I was going to get more animated, and I was like, no, just retain your composure. Just sort of, it's not necessary. Yeah, I don't know, Matt's got his opinions, and he speaks very forthrightly. What I would be interested, actually, I'm sure he's streaming and going off on one about it, which is a shame, really, because I wouldn't do that about him. But I've watched. Well, I mean, I also have another reason. I think I know why, which is that controversiality and debate. Heated debate obviously gets views, clicks. So this is going to be something that he wants, because he can exploit it. He can milk it for that. I'm sure he's going to be doing all sorts. But yeah, no, it was interesting. I'm going to be honest that like I don't know some of what he's talking about, but he goes into such details. We'd be talking about a big picture thing. I'm going to jump off soon, guys. We've got another interview in about 10 minutes with a regular Larry Johnson, who is someone who I agree with on some things, but disagree with on others. But the thing about Larry is that we've had some debates, and it's been always relatively civil. So you know, that's what I look for, is just the ability to interject and challenge, not expecting them to agree with you. Like I wasn't expecting Matt and I to agree with one another, but what I was expecting was that it would show a restraint. But yeah, it was deliberate. Obviously, I think there was a deliberate desire to. It's interesting. Matt was saying I was gaslighting when he was doing the very thing. What Matt was doing was employing the very tactics that he was accusing me of, because it sort of deflects away from the fact he's doing it. But you have to be very on point to recognize that. As I said, I've been trained in debate. I've done this for a long time. Whilst I'm not saying I know everything, I recognize tactics and methods when I see them, and Matt was doing quite a lot of them. And after a while, it was getting a little bit predictable. So that's why he kept repeating about the intellectual dishonesty and the points that I had miscommunicated or deliberately said. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just stay on the subject matter. Don't get drawn into the personal stuff. And if anything, take offense when he says that you're a liberal, because I don't think he expects me to do that. I think he expects me to be a liberal, left-leaning, anti-war, pro-Israel, or pro-Iran, or sympathetic to Iran and therefore anti-Israel or something, which I'm not. A lot of people don't like that because I'm not predictable like that. I don't know, I'm more liberal than Matt on some issues, but on other things, I'm completely with Matt. Like, I don't like the Islamic Republic, but I don't support the US military operation because I don't think it's having the intended, it's not reaching the intended objectives. And I think that the long-term economic consequences of it are not worth the short term. The regime is not falling, or the government is not falling. It's operating, albeit in a very subdued level. It's still operating. You know, so me and Matt agree on that, but he doesn't like the fact that I'm refusing to be put into a box, or that I'm refusing to play ball over the date and Hegseth, and therefore tries to deliberately shift the conversation, reframe it, make it, you know, more about us as a debate, demonstrate his intellectual capacity, and he got you. I got you, Pete. I've got you, Pyotr. You're intellectually dishonest. You lied to your audience. I got you. You didn't get shit. Didn't get shit. And because I'm sort of sitting here and just disagreeing with him and sitting like this or something, people say, oh, you're arrogant. No, I'm just not willing to be pushed into answering his question immediately. Not until he calms down, shows some respect, stops yelling, using his hands like this. At that point, I was like, okay, if you want to make the conversation about me talking to you, then I'll make it about you talking to me. Because I started employing his own tactics against him, basically, and he didn't like that. I wouldn't accept him when he labeled me a whatever, or I would challenge him on this, and he didn't like that. And I'd ask him a loaded question, and he was like, "What do you mean by that?" Or like, yeah. So yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. That was fun. Those of you from Matt's account, or whatever, you know, appreciate it. It's not what was intended, but I think this is a good. I'm gonna review this, watch it back. Good entertainment, and learn from it for sure. I'd obviously always love to have Matt back. I think it's going to be quite challenging to do that. But, you know, I'm going to be interested to see what he says on his channel, if he does clip it and if it's completely out of context, because if he does, I don't like to play dirty, but I will. And, you know, as I say, lessons learned, I think. Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Those of you from Matt's, as I say, you know, utmost respect for Matt, but fundamentally disagree on some details, and also don't resonate with his attempt to you know, push into doing things a certain way. And I will hold my ground when I really feel compelled to. Most of the time, I'm quite flexible. I'll allow some degree, but if I feel like it's thing, then I'll. No, enough of that. And we got that. But yeah, if you want to hang out on the channel as well, those watching from other communities, that you're all welcome. I debate people from all over the place. Matt's people with Matt's viewpoints as much as those completely opposed. But all right, guys, have a good one. Otherwise, I'll see you in 5 minutes for the next one. No, never rattled anyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.